What an introduction. Good evening, Hadi. How are you?
I'm okay, James. The smile on my
Yeah, good.
face says a lot, actually.
It does. We've had another really brilliant day today. We've made history once again in the gig economy. And in fact, Hadi, you yourself have made history for the gig economy. We'll explain that as we go on. But it's really exciting. It's exciting to be here
I
with you,
think,
Hadi, because
thank you
you're
very
you're the
much.
one that made history.
We all made history together. Without the backing of our members, we could have not made this history. Without your support and Yasin's support, we could have not made this history. And it's a
Yeah,
good
no, it's
win for all, not only our members, but for the whole, drivers out there struggling.
it is. It's a huge win. But before we get into it, we probably should talk about some of the other things that we've got going on at the moment. So people will have seen that last week we launched a campaign um, with Foxglove Legal. Where we sort of threatened, well, we haven't sort of, we definitely have threatened legal action against Transport for London. So probably maybe you should take a minute, Hadi, to explain that to the viewers about what's going on there and what we've done. Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading the ju- the judgment from the Supreme Court judge,
Mm.
specifically on paragraph 47. The judge is not convinced that the way Uber structured and the way they have an agreement with driver that they actually meeting the 1998 regulation law. So therefore, basically, I mean, we could see that, I mean, Uber are actually breaking law and they're not meeting their licensing agreement. So that's what we're saying to TFO, you've got to fix this now.
Yeah.
And you've got to fix it without even, us taking legal action. You can see there's a loophole here and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and it's really embarrassing for Transport for London that this has come up again, Hadi, because if you remember back in 2018 when Uber lost its license, or 2017, 18, 28, 20, yeah, 20, probably late 2017, early 2018, where the hearing was in the magistrate's court, and then they had this, then they lost it again 2 years later, and they had a hearing. Latif, they had the hearing again in 2020. Um, Sorry, I'm just turning my phone down. Um, but back 2 years ago, what a lot of it was about was that TFL accused Uber of not being transparent about how the bookings were being accepted. And I followed that case very closely, and I went and listened to all the hearings, and some of it was really hilarious. But basically, what it comes down to is a driver can't accept a booking in London or anywhere for that matter. A private hire driver cannot accept a booking. If a private hire driver accepts a booking, it's a criminal offence. You can't do it. But the problem is that TFL came to the conclusion that the way Uber had structured the app, drivers were effectively accepting the booking, and then Uber systems were automatically backfilling. And you can't do that in law. Now, the problem is that, it's kind of like counting the many angels on the head of a pin, like how when was this accepted? Where was it accepted? How was it accepted? So they couldn't ever get Uber to explain it to them. And if they did, Uber would come with like a PowerPoint presentation of 150 slides that bore the arse off TFL for 2 hours, and TFL would leave none the wiser about what's really going on with the system. So TFL got sick of this, and they called in Deloitte and commissioned Deloitte to go in and do a report on Uber systems. And after 3 months, Deloitte couldn't really figure it out either. And in the end, Deloitte said, at best, it's probably simultaneous. And Uber said, well, look, this is enough. The fact is, we're going to take Uber's license because they have not been straightforward about this. Maybe they broke the law, maybe they haven't, but they haven't been straightforward, so we're going to pull the license. And it was after that, if you remember, in the app, you get that notification now. You know, when you're a passenger, you get the notification to say your booking is being accepted by Uber London Limited. Do you remember? You know that little notification in the
I
app.
remember that. Yeah,
that's why that was put in there, to say, oh yeah, now we've accepted your booking, and next we're going to give it to the driver. But it's completely artificial. It's complete nonsense. But it was enough to keep TfL happy, and everybody moved on. And so everybody thought that this is the end of it, except that when we came to the Supreme Court, what the Supreme Court were not, instead of looking at the systems, they were looking at the contracts. And they're saying, hang on a second. Now, Uber is saying that they're acting as your agent, and they're accepting the booking, but only on your behalf, right? So TfL said, well, you know, okay, we can live with that. You know, it's the driver's booking, but you're accepting it on his behalf. You know, it's kind of a tightrope, you know, because a driver's not allowed to accept the booking, but TfL said it'd be okay if somebody accepted the booking on our behalf. The Supreme Court has burst that bubble. The Supreme Court has just, you know, put the cuckoo in the nest by saying, no, we think we're not convinced this is legal. And so now they've just, you know, TfL thought that this was done, you know, and we always told TfL they should, you know, make worker rights a condition of license. And the reason why this is important is that this is about who's the boss. You know, so Uber's saying, no, you're the boss. We're accepting the booking on behalf of you. But the Supreme Court overall ruled that we're not the boss, we're under Uber's control. And in this situation, no, we can't accept those bookings. You know, even if Uber says it's going to act as our agent. So this is a huge problem for TfL, because TfL has made a legal error. And so that's the basis of the legal letters we've sent to TfL. We said, sorry, you're in enabling this fiction to carry on. You are helping Uber screw drivers. Basically, it's as simple as that. You've helped Uber, you know, create this sham situation, and drivers are getting shafted because of it. So, you know, you need to step in and correct that error. So that was the basis of the legal letter and the action that we're proposing in partnership with Foxglove. And we sent a letter to the mayor. I sent a letter to the mayor a fortnight ago. We sent a legal letter now, followed it up earlier this week, late last week. And TfL and the mayor have 2 weeks to respond. And if they don't, well, you know, we're not gonna do our laundry here, but that won't be the end of it. Far from it. We'll consider other legal action. But, you know, this proves that the mayor and TfL have been part of the problem, not part of the solution. I mean, would you agree, Hadi?
TfL absolutely, James. And also, I always believe that TfL are the biggest problem here. And further to that, when I read the 47, and I urge all the drivers to read it, but just, I mean, you don't need to read the whole judgment. It's too boring. It's very technical. It's not something, you know, you will enjoy. But just read paragraph 47. When you read it further, I think up to the paragraph 49, it also says that the way the agreement is being put in place, every individual driver should have an operator license in order to, you know, to work for Uber. I'm sure you read this, James. Mm-hmm. And we have looked at this. I mean, Yassine, if he's watching this, Yassine remembers basically that we looked at the agreement in 2014, the agreement that we had, and clearly, basically, when you read the agreement in 2014. There's no way you could operate or work with Uber without operator license. So it's very interesting. It's messed up for Uber. I mean, sorry, for TfL. They are in a shock, and they need to fix it. And if TfL could actually fix it, they will fix the rest, and everything will be better for drivers. And I urge all the drivers, please, and we're gonna post it here. The judgment, just read from paragraph 47 to 50 or 49. There's a couple of them. That's it.
Yeah, no, it's superb, and you know, I'm going to speculate here, and also Hadi, paragraph 102. We should post the link here. Actually, we should. While we talk, I'll put it up. But because paragraph 102.
If you post a link of the paragraph 47, and yeah.
Well, we'll do that. We'll do that. But we want to get on to the big news for today. So we probably should not get too hung up on the Supreme Court. But paragraph 102 also says that this solution, this way of working, is not a path that's legally available to Uber. That's what they've said. So I mean, the Supreme Court, unanimous 6-0, is saying, TfL, you're part of the problem. You've fostered the exploitation of 110,000 people. You've been asked again and again and again to step in and sort it out. You haven't. So I'm sorry, but TfL is part of the problem of Uber. TfL has facilitated low pay, low fares, and the absolute shafting of 110,000 workers. So that's it in plain terms, really. And TfL is going to get their legal comeuppance over it, I reckon. We should move on, Yassine, should we, to today's news? I imagine that everybody wants to hear about it, and I don't know if everybody who's ready to join is already joined in. Shall we move on to this, Yassine? I assume we should. Anyway, okay, yes, Yassine says we can begin the main show. It's a bit like going to the movies, isn't it? You know, where you have the little pre-show and talk about what's coming up, and then the main event. Well, the main event is, yes, Hadi in fact made legal history today. We all made legal history. We had a superb win. We started challenging algorithmic management at Uber and the process that is used. Because it is part of the oppression of drivers. It is the part of how Uber manages drivers unfairly, and it's difficult to penetrate. But we've made some huge legal gains today. And let me just, before I jump into it, explain why this is important. The reason being is when we won at the Supreme Court, as we've just discussed, we upended a contractual system that was a load of bollocks, frankly, right? It was a load of nonsense. It's been described as fiction. It's been described as
basically, I think
faintly ridiculous. I think the judge called it this contractual system.
It's been set up to deprive people from their rights.
Yeah, that's right. And so that ended at the Supreme Court last week. But the next tool out of Uber's box, and Ola's, and Bolt's, and Deliveroo, and Amazon Flex, and Viavan, a whole lot of them, is algorithmic management. Because I can set the system up to reward some, deprive others, and if I don't like the cut of your jib, I'll just starve. I don't need to fire you. I don't need to deactivate you. I'll just starve you off the job. Easy. And the way I can do that is I can set up profiling systems, and I can reward a certain type of behavior and punish others. And you'll never know. You will never know because they will only need to tell you. But fortunately, under the data protection law, they can't do that. But again, it's a bit like employment law. We have to start challenging it. And it's even more important because of this shift away from contractual control to algorithmic control. It's important we get on top of that quickly, and we have. But the other aspect of this is because we were just talking about Transport for London, is Transport for London have put Uber and Co. in such a situation that they've introduced this sort of real-time identification system that everybody is at the root of so many unfair deactivations, that photo recognition check, the geolocation check, and possibly a whole host of other types of checks and surveillance. And we know little or nothing about it. Well, that's ended today. We have some new access to some new rights secured through the courts in Amsterdam. So to break it down for you in terms of digital rights, what we're concerned about is algorithmic management that we can't see. because this is a way of pretending, oh, no, you're free. You're an independent entrepreneur. You're your own boss. But meanwhile, we're tuning the algorithm here, behind the curtain. That's not freedom. That's management. And if you're managing us, then you owe us. If you want us to be free, let us be free. This is a fairly simple thing, but Uber wants to have their cake and eat it. They want to control you, but they don't want to be caught or seen controlling you. That's the hide the ball game we're playing algorithmically. So the way we're tackling it is that the first thing is to get access to your data under the Data Protection Act and the so-called GDPR. We have the right to access all our data. The next part is to ask for algorithmic transparency. Everybody has got the right to ask Uber how their personal data is being processed through Uber's algorithms and so on. So the way the legal language is, tell me the logic of processing. But for me, it's a bit like, Hadi, when you go to your wife is a radiographer, isn't she? Or training to be one, right? Yeah. So yeah. It's a bit like when you get these dyes injected into your body, and then you go and have a scan, and then they can see, the major organs. It can see the blood going through the major organs. You've heard of this process, right?
Yeah.
To me, data is like your blood, and how that circulates through Uber systems tells us an awful lot about how we're managed. So Uber has to not only give us the data as in the blood, but it has to tell us how it actually processed it. And then that tells us what the algorithmic management is. So you have the right to access your data. You have the right to an explanation of algorithmic management. And then thirdly, the third pillar of this stool is about automated decision-making. Because Uber is a big machine, it's a big black box, and it makes an awful lot of automated decisions. But if those decisions harm you or harm your interests, you have the right to challenge them. You have the right to demand to object. You've got the demand human intervention. You've the right to have your point of view heard, and you've got the right to appeal it. But the problem is, what are these automated decisions? Where are they that involve me? And today, the court, for the first time in the gig economy, identified automated management decisions relating to workers, specifically to my good friend Abdurazak Hadi. Abdurazak Hadi is the right way, right, Hadi? Abdurazak Hadi is the first person in Europe, in any field, or in the gig economy, where we identified a so-called automated management decision. And because it's been classified as such, it attracts new protections and rights. Hadi, do you want to tell us what happened to you?
Well, what happened to me is, it's a very simple, basically. I picked up a customer with Ola, and the customer decided they don't want to go to the right destination. They just want to go to the station. So fair enough, got there. The fare is supposed to be £5. But then, got paid £5, did a couple of the jobs, then deducted £32 where the originally customer was meant to go. And at that time, the fare wasn't a fixed price. It was actually time and distance traveled. So I was quite surprised why 32. I was told basically that 32 was taken because customers said they didn't go to the intended destination. They only went to the station. But fair enough. But I mean, the £32 I never got paid. So why you've actually deducted it? Well, this is what customers said, but you never paid me from the beginning. So I went back and forwards with Ola, and they just ignored me. Came back to James and Yasin. We were actually planning to go to a small court to gain that money back. But hey, you know what? That mistake or the ignorance that they had, or they were not willing to solve the problem, at the end, it worked on my favor. This is exactly what happened, and with this we went with it to Amsterdam, and this is exactly what. And on top of it, not only that, they said actually we're going to report you to TFL. I think I told you this, James. They sent me text messages. They reported this to TFL that you've actually been misusing the system. I mean, listen, how am I misusing the system? I mean, it's not me who decide where the customer wants. It's the customer. The customer have the authority to change to the show's destination. And at the end, you see what happens. It worked in our favor. And I remember, even when, me, James, we sat at King's Cross at the GMB office, I was wondering when we were talking about taking big giant as Uber to court, I remember exactly the words, James, you said, what actually, brings this company down is the arrogancy that they have. They think that they're untouchable, that nobody could touch them. But then we proved that we could actually take them down again.
Yeah, we did, but I mean, this is the start of a very long and big journey. I mean, we've absolutely parked our tanks on their lawn today, and not just on this particular case, but across a whole range of things. And it's really important because the platform is closed. It's closed. Anything that goes on in there, you've got no access, no control to it. You just do what you're told. And so we have, it's a bit, to me, it's analogous to 100 years ago. Trade unionists were standing outside a factory gate. They'd been locked out. You'd be locked out. You'd lose your job and you'd be locked out. And they would stage these protests outside. And, some of them were successful, many were not. But they were locked out of the workplace. We've been lockout. In Irish trade union history, where I'm from, the idea of a lockout has got a very big psychological effect because it happened famously with independent newspapers 100 years ago. So that the psychology of being locked out by your employer runs very deep in my culture, maybe in yours too. But that's what happened. That's what happened with these platforms. We were locked out. It was a lockout. And today, Hadi broke through. And we've identified that it's an automated management decision, and that attracts new legal protections that we can now access. And that's just the start. That's just us moving in and parking a big tank on their lawn. They won't like it, but it's really important. But there's more good news. We should move on with it, Hadi, shall we?
But first of all, I want to say to there's someone actually from Kenya who's actually watching us, and it's very interesting. Alan Oyogi. Hello, Alan.
Hello,
Oyogi.
Alan. You're very, very good to see you, man.
Absolutely.
How are you?
It looks like, the whole world is interested in what we're doing.
And Ibrahim, so we have somebody from West Africa and somebody from East Africa. Ibrahim is calling in from Nigeria.
Hello, Ibrahim.
Yeah, it's really great. No, it's fantastic. The good news, both to Alan and Ibrahim, is that the trick to this is that the data is in Amsterdam. And so you can access your rights in Amsterdam, even though you're in Kenya and Nigeria, because Uber controls its data for Nigeria and Kenya out of Amsterdam. So get in touch. We can be helpful to you because you don't have to be in the EU to exercise these rights. The data is in the EU. Your personal data is in the EU, controlled by Uber, and you can also access these rights. So do be in touch with ADCU Worker Info Exchange. So let's move into the judgment. Let's deal with the points. It's a complex judgment, so parts of this didn't go our way. But huge parts of it really went our way massively, and the parts that really count are the bits that are really important. So we made some test subject access requests. Uber didn't respond properly. We said, okay, fine, and we make a complaint, because we know the game with Uber. You make a request, they mess you around for months on end and so on. And we just said, like, we're not playing that game. These are test cases. Make the request. You don't fulfill. We make the complaint. On we go. But the court said, no, we should be more specific with Uber about what data we wanted, which is a bit strange because we had been specific about 28 different pieces of data we wanted. But more importantly, our challenge was to Uber to tell us what data you have. It's a bit in this game of hide the ball. How do I know what you've got behind your back? You haven't told me. How am I supposed to know? I'm relying on you to tell me what categories of data you have and then to give it to me when I want to. So on bits of that, the court sided with Uber to say that Uber had done enough on this front. And then in other areas of access, the court said Uber was right to protect the rights of riders against the rights of drivers. So for example, Uber may be able to blur pickup and drop-off points. But this is okay. We can live with that so long as we're able to calculate earnings and movement. So we need to be able to know, in order to help you calculate what your potential claim might be for worker rights. And that's really important that we monitor that so that you get everything you got coming for you. So so what makes that up? It's time and distance. It's the usual things, and location. So we need to make sure that we have the right accurate timing, accurate distance. We'll calculate the fare. That's fine. But also with these upfront fares, we might want to be able to look at routing and is the upfront price fair, considering what routing may or may not be available to you in London, for example, with LTNs. But that's another question. So we're confident that some of those issues we can overcome, and some of the issues we're definitely going to appeal. But that's the access front, where we had some pushback. But where we won big, which is the whole point of getting access, is on this issue of algorithmic transparency. Because remember, the 3 steps: data, the access to data, how that data is processed through algorithms, and then thirdly, how we then challenge those decisions. So in this algorithmic transparency, major breakthrough. 2 drivers who were deactivated for so-called fraudulent activity, the court has ordered that they must provide the data that was the basis of those decisions. That is huge. You can't imagine the casework there is at ADCU of drivers being slung off for so-called fraudulent activity. Nobody knows what it is. Uber doesn't bother to say. It gets reported to TfL. TfL come after the driver. Sometimes they're revoked. Most of the time when we're involved, they aren't revoked. Which is another reason why you must join the union.
James, even TfL don't. I don't want to say driver's name, but they are. A lot of drivers from London. When we ask TfL to ask Uber the reason, basically, even TfL don't get the answers from Uber, and they still basically revoke a driver's license. So this would actually make changes now. They would have to come and give us an answers. Why was a driver suspended, or why was it driver actually reported to TfL? And also,
it's worse than that, Hadi. They don't even bother to ask for it, from what I can see. They're just happy. Yeah. If Uber deactivated you, fine. We'll revoke. This is terrible.
We have a couple of those cases actually gone to court. Not only 1 or 2. They are sitting waiting for the hearing at the magistrate. And also, what I want to add on here, James, also, when you get a complaint from customer and you don't even know what's going on, you just be told there's a complaint and you have to prove. So now Uber basically will have to come and explain to you exactly what happened, what was the complaint all about. So it's a huge win, and it makes a lot of difference. What we've asked for is transparency, and which Uber actually denied us that, and now we have that transparency.
Yeah, it is. This area is complicated, but we have new rights that we'll be able to access. It isn't exactly. It doesn't read across every time, but a lot of the times it does. But the other thing that we should really talk about here too, Hadi, is that this is the breakthrough that couriers need. Right? This is the breakthrough that couriers need, because they haven't always been able to get the protection of employment law. Because, well, a lot of couriers, are allowed to substitute, and therefore, they haven't had the straight ride that we've been able to have as private hire drivers, because you can't substitute, because there's a certain amount of control and supervision required by the regulatory regime. But, couriers in a very different boat, and so they can't often access those rights. But now with ADCU, and that's why we have so many Deliveroo riders signing up with us. It's just unbelievable to see that membership explode at ADCU, because now we got solutions. Now we got weapons that we can defend couriers with, which is absolutely huge for us. And so we're seeing an explosion of couriers running to join up with ADCU, Amazon Flex drivers coming to sign up with ADCU, Uber Eats couriers just flocking over to join with ADCU. And that's just magnificent to see, because these types of rights that we can run across the piece for private hire drivers and for couriers and for people who do both. It's truly amazing. But let's move on these other things. So these guys that were accused of fraudulent activity, they've were deactivated now. Uber has got to cough up the explanation and the data to support that decision. Let's talk about profiling. So Ola admits to a certain amount of driver profiling, which is used to make the decision about who gets the job and who doesn't in the dispatch decision, in the automated dispatch decision, right? And so there's a whole host of things that are included in that, which includes your interaction with the customer service people. So, you know, watch your P's and Q's with those guys, because they'll be attaching tags to your profile based on how the call went or whatever. So just be aware. Your earnings profile is something, but we don't know what that means. So I presume it means the more money you make for Ola, the more work they'll give you. So the more hustle you do. But also a fraud probability score, which is huge. So Ola have been secretly calculating a fraud probability score for every driver, but not telling us or the driver what the score is or the basis of that calculation. Now, get your head around that for a second and try and translate that to real life, to your friends. Would you go around scoring your friends as in, you know, look, he's like 90% dodgy, and, you know, Hadi on the other hand is 1% clear, you know, or, you know, James might be 50-50. Yasin is 0% risk of fraud. And when we say fraud, it's not criminal fraud. It is, they described it in court as that you're not obeying their rules, which is, could be, you know, you're not accepting the work, you accept the work and you cancel it, or whatever. Whatever it is that they think you ought to be doing, but haven't told you to do. This is what we're talking about. This is very serious, to be making these kinds of moral judgments around people without telling them, and then using that as a decision of whether or not you're going to get the work. I mean, you're going to go off and, you know, take out a car loan or a vehicle financing on an S-Class Mercedes, and these jokers are keeping these kinds of profiles. Hello, Nicole. Keeping these kinds of profiles about you, and they haven't told you. That ends today. The judge has ordered that these earnings profiles, these fraud probability score, they cannot do that. That has to be disclosed to drivers. That thing, that aspect of the platform is cracked wide open now, and the light will shine upon it. The cockroaches will scatter, and Ola cannot do that anymore. And that's a huge victory. It's the one thing that really deeply offended me about the work that we've been doing these past months, is the idea that Ola had the balls to make that kind of a calculation about people. And when we went to court, they were like, so what? So what? We're just, you know, this is what we do. Well, so what? They couldn't see the problem. They couldn't see the moral problem in doing that. That ends today. So that's a huge moral victory. And any type of profiling like that is fair game from now on. Let me introduce Nicole Moore from Rideshare Drivers Unite in California. It's our distinct honor to have you here this evening, Nicole.
I'm just reading about the huge victory, and I'm so excited to hear about it. It is, you know, it's momentous for all of you in the, you know, UK, but it's really has a huge potential impact on all of us who are app-based around the world, whether it's, you know, whether it's Uber, Lyft, Ola, DoorDash, whatever. But it also, you know, so many tech-based companies are starting to control workers through algorithms. And there is a deeply moral issue around this. And, you know, we just are here in the United States. The Amazon warehouse workers are starting to organize their own union. And the companies there do so much to control people's every movement, monitoring their arms and, you know, steps and everything else. We can't continue to move in this direction as workers if we can't see these algorithms and have some control over them. I think this is, you know, the decision that just came out for you guys in Amsterdam, I think will have, will give us all tools around the world to start to get a hold of, you know, this technological control on the workforce. We need to have this visibility. I just couldn't be happier for this hard-fought victory, and I can't wait to see this go viral and really, you know, help us all. I mean, we have the same issue in here in California. We have to fight just for our data related to how much we drive and how many miles, not even the algorithms that control us. These companies can't keep this data from us. It's not their private business. It's our day-to-day lives that count on it. And when you're deactivated because an algorithm tells you that you are deactivated and you have no way to fight it, it's just, it just means that we have no rights.
Absolutely. This would be a good moment to shout out, though, for anybody who wants to get involved in this, because this is just the start. This is, you know, you ever have a sweater and you pull a thread and then you pull another thread and then before you
yes,
the whole thing unravels. That's what we're doing here to hidden management systems on platforms. This is the start, and we'll unravel them all. But we need your help. And the way you can do that is you can join this challenge. We have a challenge to get 1,000 drivers to make subject access requests. This is your make your data access request. We've set up a lovely system over on Worker Info Exchange. If Yassine would be good enough to share the link. And over there, we've got a beautiful process. You sign up. You just fill in your name. You click the buttons on what platforms you work for. So if you work as a driver and a courier, you can click both. If you only work for as a driver, click the operators you work for. If you work only as a courier, just click the firms you're working for there. Then you fill in this legal form, and all it is that you're giving us a mandate to make the request on your behalf. That's all we're doing. And then you'll receive the data. You can choose whether you want to, you know, share that with the data trust later. But we won't receive your data. You'll receive it. And then we validate your identity, because this is important. You see, these are two things that Uber and the others have put in to frustrate the process. They say, "Oh, well, you can't act on behalf of these people." That was another important ruling in the court. The court said, "Yes, we can." So that ends today. So Uber was trying to frustrate that process. That ends. That slowed us down a tremendous amount. Then Uber said, "Oh, okay, you must have a power of attorney. You must have a mandate." We have that. There's a legal form you can sign online that gives us that right to make that request on your behalf. So Uber says, "Okay, well, now you need to identify the drivers." Well, we do. It's through a global system called Onfido, which operates globally. All you do is upload a photo ID to Onfido. We don't get it. Onfido validates you against a database that they maintain, which, you know, comes from like DVLA here for licenses here, and, you know, possibly DMV in America. And then once they validate your ID, then they delete that picture of your driver's license, and they issue us a certificate to say, "Yep, we validated Adi's ID." Now, Onfido is exactly the system that Uber uses, that Delivery uses, so they can't quibble with it. It costs us money. That's okay, because it's worth spending the money to process that for you. But it's a service to you. It's free. Go in there. Please click that link. It'll only take you a minute. Click the boxes if you work for multiple platforms. this will be hugely helpful in us being able to unravel this sweater and understanding how the data, what the data is, what's being processed, assert your rights. And particularly, we want to hear from you if you've been deactivated, suspended, accused of fraudulent activity, failed a facial recognition test, failed a geolocation test. Particularly, you should be filling in that this form, giving us your mandate so that we can make the request on your behalf. The data will be sent to you. Let's move on to some of the other gains today. Surveillance. So since Uber lost its license, it had to introduce it 1 day. Have we lost Nicole? 1 day before we lost Uber lost its license for the second time. Uber ran into TfL to offer to introduce this real-time hybrid identification system. And this is the one that's been at the root of these so many unfair deactivations and these allegations, unfair and incorrect, frankly, incorrect allegations of fraudulent activity. Ola use a similar system called Guardian, and they boast about how this is an artificial intelligence, machine learning system. It processes millions of data points every second on your journey, identifies whether you've misrouted, whether you're making too many stops, whether you changed the destination, whether you're rerouting, whatever. It's looking for so-called irregular trip activity. Not that they would know what that is anyway, but that's what it's looking for. But it's probably also looking for, if it's capable of that type of intelligence gathering, it's also going to be gathering all sorts of other intelligence about you too, and about how you work and who's a preferred driver. It's best we know how these systems work. And today, the court ruled that Ola had to give that up to us, the so-called Guardian system. So any of your data that moves through the Guardian system, because remember, that's how we have to talk about here, your personal data and how it's processed. It's the same thing. Is any of your personal data that goes through the Guardian system, they have to tell us. They have to tell us why it was in that Guardian system, what they were looking at, and so on and so on. They have to make that transparent to us. That is something they desperately didn't want to do. Now they do, and this will identify why people have been deactivated, why people have been profiled, why people have been targeted, why people make some money, more money than others, and so on. It's a huge step forward. And the fact that Ola has been ordered to do it makes it so much easier for us to say, well, Uber, this real-time ID system is exactly the same. You have to do the same. And finally, Bolt. Bolt just raised a load of money from the venture capital market in December to spend $180 million on what? Exactly these types of surveillance systems. So the surveillance systems, remember, they moved. They know they've lost the worker rights game in the courts. They now want to say, okay, well, now you really are free. We mean it this time. We've changed the app. You really are free. But they've moved the control into algorithmic controls behind the digital curtain, and surveillance is a big part of that. We now have new rights to say, no. If you're going to run me through a surveillance system, you've got to tell me. You've got to tell me. We can ask for that. You've got to tell me. We've got to know. So please join us, because the more of you that join this quest to discover your data and discover how it's being handled by these platforms, the more we learn, the more powerful you become as a union. So please do that. Go register at this link. So I'm trying to see what else we need to deal with. Those are the major. Really, the major wins today. Uber and Ola tried to make an argument that, who is ADCU? Who is Worker Info Exchange? These drivers, they're,
now they know who are ADCU.
Yeah, well, they have no right to represent anybody. This is an abuse of the GDPR. We're abusing the right to access data. The court wore none of that. They threw all of that out and said, we're not listening to that crap from these companies. No, you have the right to access this data. And more, they recognize that you have the collective right to build a data trust to improve your collective bargaining power. And that's what this is all about. This is all about, they've got a huge amount of financial power, but more importantly, they've got a huge amount of informational and data power. And we're able to now tip the balance back. but you need to get in the game with us. Join ADCU if you haven't. My God, £60 a month. And if there's one thing I have to tell you, because of this surveillance arms race, we'll talk about this a bit more in a minute, Hadi, you are sitting duck for these people throwing you up as a piece of red meat to TfL. They need to be seen to do it, and they don't really care whether you're innocent or guilty. They need to make some sacrifices to TfL on a regular basis. That keeps TfL happy. Everybody has plausible deniability that the platforms are being policed. It doesn't really matter whether you're guilty or innocent. So if you're not part of a union, you need to be. This is your warning. This is your wake-up call, because you will be a victim, and you need legal support. You need a union on your side. Asad is right. £60 a year. It's nothing. £7 a month. Get on board. Get active. But also click that link. Request the data. Join this mission for us to discover what's going on. Hadi.
Yes,
I'm just yakking on there. Is there anything you want to say at this point? We should wrap up soon anyway if we're done.
Well, I mean, it's really important we all actually join the union, because I mean, I always say, if you are part of the union, remember, you're not there alone. You're there with a team who's willing to protect you, who's willing to support you, and you'll be driving comfortably thinking that you have a big community who are there to support you and help you if you come up with any problem. And we know drivers, I mean, customers can actually, complain just because they want to get a refund. They don't care. And they don't know the implication that once they put that complaint, the driver is going to face. So but when you have a union behind you, it makes a huge difference. I see drivers calling me day and day, saying that their license has been revoked, or they received the letter from TfL and so on, and they crying. And the problem is, we want to help them, but we can't, because we can only help our members. Otherwise, if everybody comes with a problem and they're willing to help them, they're going to bankrupt a union that only charges £60 a year. We are, we're not very rich to look up to. If we had the money and we were very rich, we would have looked after everybody. But you need to join, to protect your license, to protect your, yourself, because there's a lot of fake allegation out there. Be part of ADCU. You're part of the community, and you're protected.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better, Hadi. Thank you. So look, let's talk about some of the practical things that have been going on there that we've learned about from looking at data. So one thing we learned is, it's interesting. So there's the data we give them, right? There's a three-step process. There's a three-step battle, if you like, a staircase of battle from green to amber to red. In the green box is the data we give them. Name, address, your insurance details, your vehicle details, all stuff like that. It's not controversial. You have it. You can give it back. In the amber box is the data they observe about you at work. So this is your GPS traces, including your speed, your direction, your fares, your trips, your jobs, your telematics. Also, I'm afraid your braking, acceleration, all of that stuff is being collected and monitored. So that's the stuff that's your ratings. That's the stuff that's being observed about how you work. Then in the red box, where the big battle is inference data. So this is how they profile you. And we've made some gains on that today, like that earnings profile, that fraud probability profile. Like how are you making those decisions based on what we told you and what you observed? Because you're putting 2 and 2 together and getting 8. That's the risk with this type of hidden profiling that we have to crack open. So we've discovered, for example, I discovered that there was a whole profile on me. One time I got a tag for inappropriate behavior. At Gatwick Airport, I went in to pick up a passenger in the car park. The passenger cancelled. I had to leave the car park, and now they owe me money. Well, I had to say to Uber, well, I have to get the car park fee back because your passenger cancelled. And a couple of hours later, they wrote back, and very nice, no problem at all. But when I saw my data, they had attached an inappropriate behavior tag because they said they didn't know what other tag. The customer service agent didn't know what other tag to apply. They similarly applied a tag to me for negative attitude. Because I declined a job that it was 14 minutes away, and I just said a note. It was uneconomic. I can't make money going 14 minutes for a job. I can't do that. But so they applied a negative attitude tag. Now the question is, if you attach these electronic tags to profiles, how are those tags being processed? And I believe that the way that they're being processed is in deciding or helping to make the decision about what work you get. It goes into the dispatch algorithm just as the same way as it does at Ola. And so that's really important. But it's amazing when you start looking at the data, what you begin to discover. Something I discovered about Free Now, or My Taxi at the time. They were monitoring. They never asked you. They asked you to upload your vehicle details, but they were monitoring whether it was, because remember, Free Now is a joint venture between Mercedes and BMW. They were monitoring whether or not you were driving a Mercedes or a BMW. Interesting. Why? Because here we get to the processing side of things, right? The algorithm. Could it be that you are driving more work and more fares against your own fleet of vehicles? Could it be, therefore, that if I were to drive a Toyota, I may not get as much work on a Free Now platform? Well, we don't know, because they simply haven't told us how that data is processed. These are the types of inroads we have to make if we're going to have a fair deal on these platforms, because these companies can't tell us that these are open marketplaces where buyers and sellers come together, when behind the digital curtain, they're rigging the game this way, that way, or the other way. You can't do that. If you're going to do that, you're an employer. You have to pay us as employees. If you don't want to do that, you need to come clean and you need to take the hand off the tiller. You know, so these are the decisions that these platforms need to make. If they're going to play those games, then we'll have them. And it's really up to us to monitor our data. Getting your data is not an act of aggression by any shape or form, by the way, and it won't be seen as such by a platform. It's like you doing an MOT check. You should get your data just like you do an MOT every 6 months. Get the data. Let's have a look at it, see if we can see anything wrong with it. But you will help us on this next stage, because this is going to be an iterative approach. We've learned a lot this week. We've gotten some important new gains. But to get to the next level, we need to have more data. We need to have more people involved. And the more data we have, the greater, clearer the picture we have of what's going on, the more we'll be able to challenge. So please click that link and join this effort. Hadi, I think we probably should wrap up. Unless
I think, yeah, I'm just going to add one thing more. We need, a huge number of people to come up and request for the data. And at the same time, we also basically, regarding the workers' right case, we need also a lot of people to actually come and make a claim. And that's the only way we could make a difference. James, I remember last time you explained, basically, it's like Uber actually on the jungle, and actually the jungle is banning for the, and the more it bans, so exactly. So the wave of claims that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to run another session on that whole topic of and we need to come back to that employment section claim. But for tonight, if you could join that link that Yassine has been good enough to post, then we can really help us build a clearer, sharper picture of what's going on these platforms. I think I probably should summarize things up a little bit about what this decision was about. The good news is that Ola and Uber tried to block the right of a union to represent its members on data issues, the right of worker info exchange to work towards building a data trust for this union and others. The court would have none of it. They said, absolutely no way, get lost. They were sent packing on that one. The court ruled that Hadi was subject to an unfair automated decision, in that they deducted from his account money, the machine did, and there was no proper human intervention. And when we asked for human intervention, they weren't able to give it. They broke the law. And that's vitally important, because what we can't allow is these platforms to further automate these decisions that are unfair, unjust, whether it's firing you, whether it's surveilling you, or whether it is taking money off you. you know, we have to exercise these rights to say, no, we can't have that. We say, stop the machine. Let's look at this. And if it's wrong, you're going to have to fix it. That's a really important principle in how you work for an app. That's history made today.
Exactly.
And thank you to Hadi for that. Just to
And
run through the other.
And the court actually agreed with Hadi to go to his union and ask for them to intervene and ask for a help. Court agreed with me with that and said, and Uber tried, and Ola and Uber tried to stop that, but where the court actually said Hadi was within his right to go to his union, ADCU, to ask for that help.
Yeah, that's huge. So to have that declaration of an automated decision is huge. It's never happened before. And it just cracks open the platform for workers now in a way that it never has been. And that's a huge, that's us moving our tanks onto their lawn. They don't like it, but they're going to have to start getting used to it. They have been ordered to explain the basis of unfair dismissals in the test cases we put before the court, that they simply didn't explain it. The drivers had no idea what this alleged fraudulent activity was, and Uber simply now have to cough up the reasoning for it. They can't get away with just firing people and saying, yeah, whatever, fraudulent activity, we can't say anymore. No, you have to explain it. And that's good. And that's no more than anybody's entitled to, you know, in terms of, you know, basic human dignity at work. If you're going to fire me, at least have the decency to tell me why. And much less allow me to appeal it. So these are important new rights of the right to transparency over that decision, to access the data that drove that decision, the right to give your point of view, the right to appeal, and the right to demand that you stop the machine for this to happen. That's great. We've been able to put an end or make transparent at least profiling that's been used in work allocation decisions by Ola. And of course, the principle will read across to other platforms, including Deliveroo, Just Eats, Uber Eats, all of them, that if you're going to profile drivers in a certain way, and then that profile is going to drive who gets decisions about who gets work and who doesn't, and the quality and quantity, and who gets to earn and who doesn't. Sorry, that has to be made transparent. The court ruled in our favor on that, and that's huge. Trip rating, something we didn't talk about. You will be entitled to know the rating for every trip. However, which is new, because you're at the moment you only see the last 500. However, the platform is allowed to obscure the view of the rider. So you're not going to necessarily be able to identify each rating for whatever trip, but you're going to have a much richer picture of your ratings than you did before. You have the right to that. These are the major points. And then finally, these surveillance systems that are coming into prominence now, the so-called Uber hybrid real-time identification system that's causing such problems with facial recognition, geolocation, and other hidden surveillance management techniques. They're going to have to be transparent at Uber with the real-time ID system, but also Ola's Guardian system. Yeah, they're going to have to tell us how they're surveilling us, why, and we're going to have to be able to see what data they've generated as a result of that surveillance. So I think that's basically it. I mean, these are huge advances. Uber has been able to push back a little bit on our rights to access. We will overcome them. We're more than likely appeal some of those decisions, but Uber was able to push back and say, well, we have to blur out origin and destination on trip data when you're accessing it this way. And also there's some chicken and egg around automated decisions that, well, you can't challenge them if you don't know about them, but then Uber doesn't have to tell you about them if you don't know about them. We'll look at appealing that, but this is the cue for us to get our data now, because Uber has the incentive to hide more from us and to do so more than ever before. So it's really important that you join this mission. Let's even the battleground. Let's even the score. Let's have justice for drivers. But you know what? In the longer run, let us have a better relationship with these platforms based on equality, respect, professionalism, not tech feudalism. We're not asking for, we're not asking for an awful lot here. I can tell you things will get a hell of a lot worse if we don't stand our ground. So we're at the hour mark, but thank you very much. Please, thank you for listening. Please do, really important, join that campaign to access your data. Really important, this is an important day because it validates our decision to rebrand last year, our organizing principles as a union around data. This shows that we've made the right choice. We're making the right moves here, and we're making some seriously good progress. Thanks to you, and a special thank you to so many people who have joined recently. It's just transformed our union. It's just become, it was already growing very fast, but just in recent weeks, and on the back of this news as well, there's been such a surge of workers joining us, couriers and drivers joining us. And I can't thank you enough for your confidence and your belief in what we're doing. And I can also tell you that you don't have a team that will work as hard for you as Hadi will, as I will, as Yassine will, as Zamir, Azim, Alfie, Dario, don't mix anybody out here. Kirsty, of course, our women's officer. I don't mean to miss anybody off the team. I'm just off the cuff here, and I'm extremely tired after a long day of trying to get this thing translated from Dutch, understand it, and communicate it. But you will not, of that team, you will not find another team in the trade union movement who is going to work as hard for you. But also the key bit here is that we cut out the middlemen. We all are drivers or couriers or have been, and so we know this game. And we have the passion to reform this industry. We don't have, intermediaries. We don't have academics. We don't have people who don't know anything about anything working with us or for us. This is true trade union democracy in action. And I thank you for all the support and confidence you've had in us. It's paying off. And I really thank all of those who've recently joined and the many, many more that are about to join in the days and weeks ahead. We've got an exciting road ahead of us. We've mapped out the battlefield, and we're going to go for it. So please join us. Yes, Yassine is right. We've been representing drivers for 7 years. It's been a long time. I can't believe 7 years of my life has been pulled up in this. It's been the most difficult time of my life. Hadi knows this too, and for Yassine, but also probably the most rewarding, most important things we'll ever do in our lives, because we're at a turning point in technology and in society and in work. And it's people like us, not me, people like us, all our members. We are the ones, and how the decisions we make today will really shape how work and society goes forward. Because if we stay quiet now, if we accept a kind of tech feudalism where you're controlled by algorithm and you have very little say, just woe betide, what happens to our kids and other people and other workers. If not us, who? It is up to us to take a stand. And we as a team can't do this alone. We can't do it at all without you. So please do your bit, join the union. Even if you can't join the union, you're very welcome to join this data challenge. Yassine's put the link up too. Please do that. Hadi, sorry, we should wrap up. I should go home at this point as well.
Before that, basically, what I need to make the last appeal for all our members. Monday meeting, please attend at the Zoom meeting. It's really important. Yes. James, I think you also need to call out all our members to join in our Zoom meeting on Monday, 6 o'clock, is it, I believe? If I'm correct, Yassine?
Yassine will post it up. I hope. I'm a bit brain dead at the moment, so I don't know what time. All our members are going to get an email. We've got an email, so check your emails. But definitely, yes, join the meeting on Monday. Okay, we'll sign off. Say good night. Good to see you, Hadi.
General meeting for ADCU. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
You too, James.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.